I'm aware that there are some devotees who have been studying the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, and it is one of the lengthier Upanishads. It's also one of the most recent Upanishads, and therefore it incorporates a number of contemporary ideas of its day. Don't ask me when was its day, because we have no knowledge of it. And it may well be a combination of different sages who are contributing toward the overall thing. We know that there are 6 sections. We know that at least the first section is certainly written by one author. When we say written, it's quite loose, because the mantras are relayed in a poetic form with a certain meter, and therefore remembered word for word because of the rhythm and the recitation and the perfection of that system, that style. And then, of course, recorded for posterity later in words. Shvetashvatara refers to the sage by that name, but the translation also goes that white horses or taking us over, so it's an appropriate title. We know that it is a little later, and we know that it's part of the Krishna Yajurveda. As you may know, there are 2 recensions in the Yajurveda, Shukla and Krishna, that is the white and the dark. And the dark is called that because the contents are not so well organized. Now, very often I'm asking people, do you have any questions? Because, as I say, if there are no questions, there are no answers. And if you spring that surprise on people, it's like presenting something. It's like getting a response of rabbits in the headline, I think. In the headlights is the expression. It's a surprise. We expect you to sit here and be entertained by you. Now you're asking a question. But we're not here for that. We're here to explore. And what's the use of exploration? Discovery. And so all of this is leading to discovery. And the central questions are there for posterity. And 18 questions are there, not posed as questions. The start of, there are 6 sections, and the start of the first section is really multiple questions which are taking place. But then if you break the whole thing down into topics, each topic really is a response to a question. Maybe it's an unwritten question or unposed question, but the question is there. And if you count it out, it's 18 questions. And so the most fundamental questions really will be to do with the ultimate cause. And when you pose a question, there's an assumption, an axiom. There must be some kind of first cause. Now, if you take that for granted, then your exploration is okay. But if you think that there is no cause, then you're stuck. And our experience is that in nature, there is always a cause and effect going on. And the cause is more subtle than the effect. So we're in a universe, and we've come into the middle, and we have to try and figure it out. As I say, it's like going into a movie. We never came in at the beginning, and we're not going to stay to the end. And we have to try and figure out what's happening in between, not just for interest's sake, but for discovery's sake, because that discovery is the most profound thing that we have, and we are born for that, says the Vedanta. But is it true? And so we can't explore the entire Upanishad, but only give some kind of overview. That's all I'm intending. To see if we can explore some of these questions, and then together explore some possible answers, and see, does the Upanishad actually make these answers to our satisfaction? And of course, we can be assured that they are, otherwise it would not be an Upanishad. And so when we explore, either thousands of years ago or today, the same kind of reasonings are coming up. And this is very pertinent for this modern era because in an age of science, which has distanced itself in Europe, in the Western world, from religion more and more and more, beginning in the 17th century, when there was a 30-year war, there was a Reformation, and then thinking people all thought, the war, the Europeans being savaged by, on the one side, the Catholic Church, on the other side, the Protestant movement. And if they can't decide on the supreme and the afterlife and all these theological questions, then let's leave it to them and let's find out about this world itself. And then every age will insert the cultural values of its day. For example, in the age of machinery, in the industrial, beginnings of the industrial movements, we can see maybe the world as a kind of clockwork universe. This was Isaac Newton's universe. He thought on the pattern of everything going on, that if you put in enough variables, you'll know exactly a thoroughly deterministic universe, a clockwork universe, how the universe runs, full of predictability. But then what's the implication of a supreme cause? Somebody who winds the clock up, puts it in motion, and goes to heavenly Hawaii on holiday and leaves it running. So you're left with a kind of deism. And that's not really what the original discoverers of truths had in mind. That wasn't their discovery. Their discovery was, we're in touch with a first cause that hasn't just created and run away, but is intimately connected with it. And Vedanta goes further, it says, actually inserts itself in it, actually is the material and efficient cause for it. It's not that creation is something separate from it. That might be a beginning understanding, because that's our experience. We're experiencing a world, energy and matter and so on and so forth. That's what it boils down to. And therefore, anything that is outside of that will be different from it. That's the conclusion. But the Vedanta, the Upanishads say something very different. They say, no, created but entered into it. And that's a significant difference. So we begin really with a question. And the question is around students who are asking, and they must have heard of this thing called Brahman. And what is Brahman? Well, it is seen to be something you cannot even think of. People just talk about it, but don't really explain it. And so it's a theoretical cause somewhere. And those students who are trying to tackle the subject are asking, is this Brahman the cause? Or is it something else? Is it something that is so remote from us that it runs in parallel and everything else runs after? And there must have been a philosophy around like that. And then just to verify the doubt, as it were, what is Brahman is the next question. Where do we come, whence do we come from? Or whence did we come to be? And then whereby do we live? And whither do we go? Where do we go? Where do we come from? What's sustaining us now? And where are we going? Where are we going? We're on a kind of journey. We don't know where we came from. And we don't know what's keeping things going. And we don't know where we'll end up. So this is a question that is there today also. And then at whose command we abide, whether in pain or in pleasure. In other words, coming to the individual life full of experience. And the experience is not always smooth. It's a kind of hilly ride. It's a kind of cycle ride of hills and dales. You go up, you have to come down, but then there's another up. Pain and pleasure, pain and pleasure. So, at whose command? Now, all of this is making assumptions that some entity, which is running the thing. And then some suggestions, some conjectures are given. And these are the same conjectures which are here today. And one suggestion is it time? Now, when they say time, try to figure out what that means. What does it mean? It means time is a registration in our own human minds of events, of changes. So what is that change which is going on? And what we call change, of course, is called evolution. So when we talk about evolution, I'm just bringing something else up here, which gives us the Shvetashvatara Upanishad as it is. Yes. So the ultimate cause, what is that? And time is another way of saying evolution. Something evolves. Is that the cause? Often biologists will say, oh, that's the cause, and we don't worry how it all began. We're only concerned with the evolutionary part of it. And then is it to do with nature? Is nature the cause? A materialist or physicalist will say, nature is the cause. We don't have to look for anything more than that. Because scientifically minded people don't want to invoke a God, thinking it's a being from the Middle Ages, before the Reformation, where people disagreed and where skepticism and atheism came in. The scientific age is full of that because some will claim we don't need anything else. All the great atheistic movements of today, from the 1970s probably onwards, will all say we don't have to look any further because science will explain everything. And if it hasn't now, then it's all right, we'll give you a promissory note. In the future, everything will be explained. So is that nature itself? That is the cause. Now we're getting close to some of the philosophies of the day, namely Sankhya, and Sankhya makes this claim. And the Shvetashvatara Upanishad will give us a flavor, for the first time really in the Upanishads, of a mix of Vedanta philosophy, Sankhya, and yoga together. And for the first time it's mentioning Shiva, it's mentioning Rudra and Shiva as a quality, or a series of qualities: beneficence, kindness, compassion, love, goodness. After all, the word Shiva really means auspicious, one who is auspicious. So the first time we're getting this mix of a kind of personal God somewhere and the impersonal, but it all stems from these original questions. And then is it the law? There is an understanding in modern physics and everywhere else that they're just a set of laws or parameters. We don't know where they came from, but they were always there. And what they did was, of course, they kept the laws and did away with the lawgiver. So the laws must be running things. We don't have to look any further than that. Or is it just out of necessity? That's a theological position. Or is it just chance? That's another argument that is used. The difference between a theist and atheist. Capital C, by chance, says the atheist. Capital G says, by God. That's the only difference. So is it chance? Is it just a dice? Is it just a randomness? Now, these questions are relevant today, but these are questions, suggestions, or conjectures way, way back. Nothing really has changed. And then, is it to do with the elements or matter? Or is it genetic? Is it from the womb of a male or female, or a female with a male sperm and so on? Is it biological? And then the next question, by whom? Is it governed? Well, in answer to that, there's the suggestion that there is some existence inside us, some fundamental cause, Because when you analyze all of these things from the point of view of what is the thing that is changing all the time, then you come to this resolution that there is an existent thing which is a cause. And you can say there are two things, there's the jiva and there's the atman. And if we say the jiva, or the surviving soul, is that the cause? But you see, the conclusion is none of this exhibits indications of freedom. And this individual soul, so-called, is not free. It's under the sway of pleasure and pain. So what's the answer? The answer lies in those people who practice essentially meditation. So it goes like this. The sages in meditation and through concentration have pierced through the cover to see that great power belonging to that one himself, what is hidden in its own qualities. Being one, he superintends all the causes, time, self, and the rest. But before that, it's saying, none of these things, conjectures that are being suggested, are valid. On what basis? Logical basis. Because the cause cannot be the union of the many. It cannot be just the sum of parts, because they're not self-dependent. And the self, that is the individual, is also not self-dependent. You can't say a rock is self-dependent and that it's caused by itself. You can't say the nature causes itself. You can't say the body causes itself. Even if you take a materialist point of view, the body is dependent on food, you must have noticed. So we're looking for something that is independent. That must be an ultimate cause. And the soul as it is, as a person, is powerless because there is independent of him a cause of pleasure and pain. You have no control over it. It is all determined. Nobody willingly said, I'm going to enter into this world because I'm enjoying pain and pleasure alternately. So what is the discovery? The discovery will not be found, and the discovery as an ultimate reality is not perceived by the senses. It's not an object of scrutiny. It cannot be understood by the mind. It is a matter of undoubted experience, and it's the experience of the innermost consciousness of a person. And so the only proof of it is direct perception, and that is undertaken through meditation. So meditation is absolutely necessary. There is no other way. Practicing meditation is what is required. Now you may say, well, sometimes I meditate, sometimes I don't. Then you see, if you ask somebody, how is your spiritual life? How is your meditation? Yes, well, I don't really have time. I get up in the morning and that's an exercise in itself. And then I have to do this and that and the other, and I have to feed animals, and then I have to organize my day and so on and so forth. In other words, relegating meditation to a secondary position. But these sages took it as a primary concern because this whole journey was a journey of exploration and discovery. The exploration part is called meditation. The discovery is its effect. And the effect will be the answer to all these questions. It will reveal what is the causal thing. And so, the sages in meditation and through concentration, they pierced through the outer coverings because all of these other things that were mentioned, namely time, nature, chance, and so on, these are all effects, not causes. They're all secondary observations. Let's take evolution, for example, of what is described as time. What is moving something on? What is the arrow of time, as it is called? What initiates it? What presents us with a sense of past and present and future? And so we meditate on these things, and it's like meditating on a river whose waters consist of 5 streams, sense organs, and so it goes on like that. It goes on in a very graphic kind of way and describes this in a series of metaphors. One metaphor is life is like a river, it's always moving, it's always changing. And yet, there's an observer that doesn't move, doesn't change, that is watching it. Then what about energy? Energy is also mentioned, by the way, in the series of conjectures. And we hear much about electricity today. We're hearing about, for example, electronics. We're hearing about computer energy. We're hearing about a concept of pure energy. And if you ask people, do you believe in a God? No, not really. Well, is there something? Yes, I believe in a supreme something. To me, it's energy. Well, you haven't quite got it. It's better than saying matter or the physical. It's more subtle, no doubt. But what kind of energy? Mental energy is being supplied even now as I'm talking and as you're listening. So some people are identifying energy with the Godhead itself. But it's all because energy is the key thing of today. And the next thing will be, oh, God is like artificial intelligence that we created. And the one thing that we want, really, as a cause, is something that reflects the ultimate evolution, and that is a conscious, thinking, evaluating being. And therefore, the supreme cause must be consciousness of something. Consciousness. You cannot get consciousness from unconsciousness. You cannot get existence from non-existence. And so because we're all focused on energy, we tend to think that energy is the cause, but it cannot be. It's the first thing we are aware of when we search for the origin of things, that it must be something like ourselves. And so it is told biblically, we are made in the image and likeness of that thing. And there are effects and exist to serve the soul. This is the view of Vedanta, that all these effects are there only for one purpose. It's as if the soul is entombed, as it were, in a body and forgets its origin and true nature and gradually loses all sense of its own reality. And of course, the Upanishads are telling us that it is one without a second. It's a very significant phrase. The phrase would serve as the whole of the Upanishads, actually. If all of the Upanishads disappeared except that one phrase, and if we read it deeply enough, we would have endless food for reflection in that single thought. Because we're surrounded by many, many difficulties, brought to our attention by increasing information. The media is bombarding us, if we allow it, with all kinds of anxious scenarios, wars, nuclear disturbances, potentially, economic difficulties, many, many different things, which if we hadn't gotten the information, we would be blissfully unaware of. And yet, this phrase, one without a second, covers the whole thing. It gives us a unity of existence. It gives us a purposeful direction. One without a second, no other second thing. That means the highest conclusion of all these Upanishads will be this non-dualistic position. Not monism, because that restricts us. Because now, if you say one, then it's a numerical thing as opposed to 2 or 3 or 4. No, it's non-dual. It's deliberately described in this way. So this phrase means that not only does this ultimate reality exist, but its existence is there, and what we register as existence must mean that it is a kind of reflection of that one existence. We may have many differences about us and so on, but this one without a second is the finality. It's where we can all dissolve into, and we have an experience of it. Because every night we resign our passport identity and drift into sleep, dream, where we have many adventures, and then into dreamless sleep. And the most profound conclusion of our Vedanta philosophy is contained in 12 mere verses of the Mandukya Upanishad, which highlights the idea that you think that this is the only world. Your individuality, your individual problems and difficulties and relationships and what have you, bombarded by media reports and so on. No. If that becomes your primary world, then you'll suffer from insomnia. You'll carry it through and dream about it endlessly and toss and turn and wake up in the morning. But you see, we don't exactly do that. And then we melt into this unity state, this one without a second, actually, this area of potentiality, creative potentiality, a deep, deep sleep where the mind is not there, the mind is not active. And yet there's just a deep awareness of a presence, a nidra, a sleep. When we go into yoga nidra, we are doing this consciously and sitting there in a state of awareness without simply exploring or simply experiencing pure being, like wiping off material from a whiteboard or a blackboard, leaving everything blank in order for us to put something there. That something there we call concentration, or dharana. And then this explores then how this universe works. So the next question is, what's the benefit? Well, the benefit of all of this is that we get some fulfillment, some peace of mind. But the world is like a divine wheel. And there's a description. You can imagine 3 evolutionary forces on the outside, all combining to create this illusion for us that this world is the only thing, and the whole thing is revolving, and it's described in a very complex way. It's desired. So some of these analogies are put, and worthy of meditation as well. We meditate on the river whose waters consist of the 5 streams, that's the sense organs, which is wild and winding with its 5 springs, whose waves are the 5 vital breaths, whose fountainhead is the mind, and so it goes on. It has 5 whirlpools. Now, why should we meditate on that? Why should we not meditate on this one without a second? Because that's the contrast. We start off by evaluating the effects. And when we evaluate the effects, we come to that single thing, which is the cause that holds the whole thing together. And so in that vast Brahma wheel, in which all things live and rest, the bird flutters about, so long as one thinks that the self in him is different from the mover. And when blessed by him, then he gains immortality. This is in reference to a divine grace that opens up for us in a corresponding way. Our effort stimulates it and guides us and opens things up for us. And so it is this entity, there's a saving knowledge that is associated with this Brahman. So we have to just explore this whole thing like a divine wheel where we are entrapped, as it were. Although we are free, we can't feel it because we are deluded by this this central small point that we identify as hugely important and significant, called I. And from there, we make every effort for it to survive We make every effort for it to thrive, not understanding that what we call me, in that sense, is all dependent. We are dependents, thinking that we are free. There's this phrase, free will. It's a kind of contradiction in terms, because freedom and will are different. They're opposites. If I have a will, there must be some preceding conditional thing there. If I have a will to move a chair from A to B, the chair must be existing already, and I must be evaluating alternatives of movement, and there are restrictions about it. There's no freedom in that, but there's a freedom of choice where I can stand back, and in that area of freedom, all the conditions are gone. So there's a saving knowledge of Brahman that not only explains the divine, but also explains the world and explains humanity as well. And it is the Lord, it is put. And here we come across this term for the first time, actually. Now, I was in discussion with a devotee probably about a week or so ago. There is no mention anywhere of God. No. You never studied the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, or the Isha Upanishad for that matter, where that is inserted. Because what we call God is this Saguna Brahman, is this entity that uses time and space, that is within the fabric of these three gunas, these three restricting forces of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, but not subject to them, commanding them, in control of them, using them, exhibiting them, reigning over them, ruling over them. And this is what we popularly called God. It is described as Isha, which means Lord. So the Lord supports all this together, the perishable and the imperishable, the developing and the undeveloping, the living or embodied self. Not being the Lord is bound because he has to enjoy the fruits of works. But when he has known the Lord, that is the self, identifying this Lord with the divine self, is freed from all the fetters. There are two. One knowing Ishvara, you can say God. The other not knowing, that is called Jiva. When both are unborn, one is all-powerful and the other is powerless. Thus there is one through whom the other receives the recompense of his works and so on. Now, that means that what we see in Vedanta, this Shvetashvatara Upanishad incorporates all of these ideas beautifully, that what we call Vedanta is a religion of plus, if you want to use the term religion. We have to use it in the sense that Swami Vivekananda used it as religion is realization. Realization of the fact of your own divinity. But we won't catch it all in one go. There are some who may. These are unusual types, but for the ordinary run-of-the-mill person, we'll have to do it progressively. And progressive means we don't deny any position. Some physicalists will say, the world exists and then that's all there is to it. Yes, that's all you may see and understand. But actually even modern science tells us about the invisible forces below it. That's the foundational thing. And that's actually the reality, not registered like that. If we registered like that, we couldn't move, we couldn't operate, we couldn't work. So things are designed so that we cannot see properly. They're designed for things to be hidden. And that hiding part is intrinsic to nature, comprising of these three forces, binding us as it were, until we realize we can never be bound. And so it's not that there are two things. It's not that there is Ishvara and something else. It is this manifested entity called God. And so we say, yes, do you believe in the world? We do. Well, are you an idealist? What about the world of ideas like Plato? Yes, that too. Then what about the elemental world? What about the devas and the gods? Yes, we believe in the subtle elements. Then what about God? Yes, cosmic mind, we believe in that. But there's more. So all along, it is a religion of pluses, never coming to an end. But there's more. More? Yes. An afterlife? No, we won't worry about that. There's more. There is this creative aspect, this cosmic mind, and more than that is this entity unmanifest, where all these qualities remain in equilibrium. You can't know something exists until there's a kind of disturbance in it. And so that is what we call Prakriti, nature. And we have many other terms. Maya is a term, the one that hides things from us and reveals things. And that is none other than this Lord, this God. Now, interesting enough, in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it is called Rudra. And etymologically, if you want to trace back, what is this Rudra? Well, Rudra we find in the Vedas. And there is some disagreement possibly on the root of it, but most people say it comes from howling. This world is something like a violent movement forward, something that is projected and has a mix of good and bad, of pluses and minuses, and a kind of balancing that goes on, and that is why a regulator is necessary to balance all of this. That is what we call God. What is that? It is a Lord responsible for the harmony and balance of the whole universe, creating a rhythm wherever we see it, making sure galaxies don't collide, making sure that this planet that we're on and the solar system that we're on are in the Goldilocks condition at the outer arm of a spinning galaxy and going round and traveling at such enormous speeds. When you add all the speeds up collectively, we're traveling at huge speeds and not knowing it. So this is the world that we find ourselves in. The world is apparitional, it is not actual. So that which is perishable is the pradhana, that is the primary matter. The immortal, the imperishable is hara, the self. It makes this distinction. And this which rests eternally within the self should be known. And beyond this, not anything needs to be known. Tasmin no bhava vijnate. What is that? Knowing which? We can know everything. There's an assumption that there is some substantial thing from which everything is made, which is actually not different from it. And the typical examples would be, there's no gold and a ring. There's no clay and a pot. Gold can be made into an ornament, a bracelet, a ring, many other things. It can be all melted into a cone or a bar. And nonetheless, it is gold. And then there is this invocation in this Upanishad to Savitri. So where are we on the questions before we explore that? So what is the first cause? This Upanishad has explained it. And then Savitri is something like the sun beaming, the giver of life, the giver of light. This is why the Gayatri mantra will be a primary kind of mantra in the Vedas. And we get initiation into it, or children get initiated around about 9 or 10 years of age. They take on a second life, a second thread. 3 threads are put there and initiated into this mantra. And what does this mantra contain? It contains all of the philosophy. It says that there are several mantras said in advance, expressing that there are 3 worlds, not just one. 3 states of consciousness are there, not just one. And then we meditate on what? That which lights the sun, that which lights all things which are lit are because something is there lighting it. That shining, all things shine, this Upanishad echoes. Echoes because it's also told elsewhere. In the Katha Upanishad, for example, is told. That shining, all things shine. And therefore, the symbol of that will be this Savitri. May the sun at the commencement of your practice called yoga take hold of our mind and thoughts. So there's an invocation which is there in the second section of this Upanishad. And then it goes into the practice of yoga. What does it do? It teaches us the process of meditation. This is why the Bhagavad Gita to the Vaishnavites is one thing, incorporating many different contemporary ideas of its day. But this Shvetashvatara Upanishad is taken as the equivalent thing for devotees of Shiva, that concept. And so, just as there's a chapter in the Bhagavad Gita on meditation, just as we find descriptions of meditation in the Bhagavatam, just as we find in yoga itself, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the whole process of meditation is described. And because this is the one method that we will use in our exploration, it is the trail where we go and explore. It is the exploratory trail we go on to make our discovery. That is meditation. And so a full description of that yogic process of meditation is given. It befits the wise who fix their mind and thoughts on the Supreme Self to utter lofty invocations to the divine. And he who alone knows the law has ordered the sacrificial rites. Great is the praise of the divine sun, that being which lights all beings. And so it goes on, the path of yoga, holding your body steady with its three parts, that's chest, neck, and head, even turning his senses with the mind inward to enter the heart. He will then in the boat of Brahman, that is Om, cross all the fearful torrents. Now the Patanjali Yoga Sutra suggests repetition of this mantra Om. Gayatri is supposed to dissolve into the Om. And then no good just repeating it, meditating on it. That means also if you have a supporting mantra, there's no good just repeating it. In meditation, it becomes not only the guide inward, but it is to be meditated on itself, because every aspect of it has a depth of meaning. There is a certain organization and a certain style of meditation that gives a mantra without any meaning. You just repeat this, please. And that really is equivalent, you might say, to superstition. A mantra will have to be accompanied by a feeling because it is an idea, it is a concept. Every word has a concept. Every concept has a word. And so that when we repeat it, in meditation at least, we are understanding what it means. So repetition of Om and meditating on its meaning is Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And then compressing his breathings. Let him who has subdued all the motions breathe forth through the nose with gentle breath. This is a whole description of the yogic method of meditation in its preparatory stage. And then let him restrain his mind, that chariot yoked with the vicious horses, in other words, the senses that normally jump all over the place in an outward movement. Let him perform his exercises in a place which is level, pure, and so on. Describes it all. Then, and echoes, by the way, the instructions in the Bhagavatam. And then the next thing is the question of what is the highest reality. So, why praise the sun is one of the 18 questions. And we've described why. And then, how do we practice meditation is a question. This has just been explained. Then the next question would be, why should we have such a thing as a vision of God? And is God immanent? Is it right here and now? Or is it in a post-mortem something? Is it only to be found in meditation, or can it be found with the eyes wide open? And so it goes on there, and this is where we find the answer to the question of, is it outside? Is it inside? Is it everywhere? And it comes in the form of prayer. So prayers to, in this case, Rudra. O Rudra, you dweller in the mountains, you look upon us with that most blessed form of thine, which is Shiva, auspicious, not terrible or good, all good and supremely peaceful. Immediately, we have the contemporary idea of Shiva. Furthermore, it's saying, O Lord of the mountains, make lucky that arrow which thou, a dweller in the mountains, holds in your hand to shoot. Do not hurt man or beast. In other words, the arrow, the projection of Shiva in the tantric system is called Shakti. And Shakti is energy, and how it is used can be for the good or the harm. It is not dedicated in any specific way, just like any energy. And the most subtle energy is our thought. Swami Vivekananda describes it in his Raja Yoga as psychic prana. If you control psychic prana, in other words, thought, flow of energy that's going through the mental field, you do it thoroughly, you're able to control prana everywhere. You're in control of the entire energy of the universe. And that's no exaggeration. He spells it out with great, great confidence and logic, because if you control it here, you control it everywhere. And then it deals, of course, with knowledge of the Supreme as the way to the eternal life. And those who know beyond this, the high Brahman, the vast, hidden in the bodies of all creatures and alone enveloping everything, going back to the Upanishad, as the Lord, they become immortal. And so we find a great compendium of ideas from different Upanishads in this one Upanishad, it seems. And so, what is this highest reality? It describes as, what is this highest reality? What is the significance of the Lord of the mountains is another question. What is the supreme knowing? And is it the way to eternal life? All of this is described in this Upanishad. And then the next thing is, what we've heard of a cosmic person. In fact, in the Rig Veda we find this famous Purusha Suktam, this whole of the universe described as a vast cosmic person. So the cosmic person is described, and we can pose it as a question. The question being, who is this cosmic person? Now the description is so beautiful and poetic. He exists in all faces, all heads, all necks. He dwells in the cave of the heart of all beings. He is all-pervading, Shiva, therefore he is Bhagavan, Lord, or in other words, God. The person, Purusha, is the great Lord. He is the mover of existence. He possesses that purest power of reaching everything. He is light, he is undecaying. Just reading this description evokes a feeling of love. It evokes in the bhakti. Now, bhakti yoga is not mentioned, but in the bhakti of the devotee, going through this creates a feeling of elevation and thankfulness. Then, for meditation purposes, this person, don't forget, Purusha is a cosmic person. It's not larger than a thumb, in other words, very subtle, dwelling within, always dwelling in the heart of man, is perceived by the heart, the thought, the mind, and they who know it become immortal. Then this famous passage, this person with 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet, 1,000 meaning infinite, encompasses the world on every side, extends beyond it, dwells inside every being, not 10 fingers away from the navel, That is in the cave of the heart. Having described the process of meditation, we're now having described the subject of meditation. In hands and feet are everywhere. Its eyes and head are everywhere. Its ears are everywhere. It stands encompassing all the world. Such great detail this Upanishad goes into this, dwelling on it with big passages, devoid of all the senses, yet lighting up all the senses. It's a whole meditation in itself. It is the Lord and ruler of all. It is the great refuge of all. The embodied spirit dwelling within the city with 9 gates. 9 gates, we find the echo from the Bhagavad Gita, which in turn is an echo of the Katha Upanishad, 11-gated city. And then described as the swan. The swan is used as a symbol of this jiva going through this life. You see the emblem of the Ramakrishna movement, there it is, the swan representing the jiva, the soul going through. And this is also a symbol of karma yoga. That is, we are active because we are obliged to be active. But why shouldn't we be a swan, just simply gliding through life? That's the key to what is called karma yoga. And so it goes on like that, grasping without hands, swift without feet, seeing without eyes, hearing without ears, smaller than the small, greater than the great. All these descriptions are there in answer to this question, who is this cosmic person? And this is the practice of yoga with eyes open, not just with eyes closed. Because with eyes open, what do we see? Hands and eyes and heads everywhere. Supposing we re-registered and see this divine glory flowing through all of these parts, what will the effect be? How will our view shift? How will all our small, petty bitterness and disappointments and all that, where will they all go? When we see things with new eyes in this way, seeing God everywhere, in other words. And then the next question comes, is there one God of the manifold world, or are there many? And then what is the difference between the universal and the individual self? These questions are still outstanding. Does knowledge of God save us from anything? These questions are delivered. This is the whole of section 4 is dedicated to these questions. And we may as well go through the other questions as well. Is the one God inside everything? Who is the individual soul? Does knowledge of God give freedom? And then finally, chapter 6, which is really a wind-up of the whole thing. What is divine immanence and transcendence and the cosmic process? 18 questions in all, if we explore them as questions. And of course, the Upanishad fills in the answers. So I haven't got time now to elaborate on the others, but simply to make some comments. One entity, but immanent in all, and we've already found this beautiful description through all hands, through all eyes, and so on. But we still have to bear in mind that the withinness is still the imperishable and infinite. And when we talk about immanence and transcendence, we're talking about nothing changes, it's only our view of it. In other words, it's like the sun shining, and then the clouds are in the way. And when the clouds move on, the sun never did anything. It was always there shining. So when the clouds of our ignorance moves on, we simply see that one thing, and that one thing represents transcendence. But when we feel it on the skin, for example, or see it giving life to vegetation and so on, the sun is immanent also. Its rays are there. It shines regardless of whether there is an object to shine upon. And it shines in the sense that it's shining, all things shine. And then what is the individual soul? He who is endowed with qualities and performs works that are to bear fruit and enjoys the reward of whatever he has done migrates through his own works. The Lord of life, assuming all forms, led by the three evolutionary qualities called gunas, and following the three paths. Three paths refers to you either get liberated now, or you go to the path of the righteous or the unrighteous. These are the three paths after death. This is, in other words, the role of the restricted individual soul. But there is liberation through knowledge of the one entity. He who knows him who has no beginning and no end, in the midst of chaos, creating all things, having many forms, alone enveloping everything, is freed from all the fetters, all the things that are binding you. And then finally the question comes, this one being, immanent and transcendent, unfolds, as it were, is the cosmic process, is the unfolding one. And finally, the last three verses are really just the epilogue, as it were. And it's worth reading this out. Through the power of his austerities and through meditation, has the wise Shvetashvatara truly proclaimed Brahman, the highest and holiest. So then another question arises, did he actually answer the original questions about origin? And I think you'll find he has. The holiest of the holiest, to the best ascetics as approved by the company of sages. This highest mystery of the Vedanta. Vedanta, if you take it out of its logical principles, becomes a kind of mystery because why? Why are we bound? If we are free, why do we feel bound? Why is there this Maya? Why is there this world? Why isn't there just this revelation straight away of this one without a second? And the answer is, we don't know. All we know is that on realization, all of this disappears. And that is why we call Maya, something like a magic show where appearance and disappearance occurs. So it's the highest mystery delivered in a former age, in other words, perennially, should not be given to one whose passions have not been subdued. Very often when you have an organization, a Vedanta society, you say, let's get members in. No, this Vedanta is for select people who are thirsty. Swami Vivekananda, in his sojourn in the West, he, first of all, engaged big touring companies, arranging events, event organizers, dealing with hundreds of people, and he found no satisfaction in it. His deepest satisfaction was sitting on the grass, picnic style, with a sincere group of devotees who, in their own right, became extremely saintly. Sister Christine, for example, Josephine MacLeod, those close people, devotees. The quality was there. Jesus put it a little bit more crudely. You don't cast your pearl before the swine, that kind of thing. It's a little bit crude and a little bit graphic. Nevertheless, you see, a receptive mind has to be there. And if you're talking to somebody and they're asking, so what is your fundamental worldview? And you outline the Vedanta philosophy, those who have ears will hear, some have ears, but they don't hear. So these are 18 fundamental questions, and I hope that gives some insight, therefore, into this Upanishad, beautiful Upanishad, as you have seen, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which is not normally included in the primary Upanishads. But because it has a commentary by none other than Shankaracharya, it is worth studying, and it has a collection of profound truths and does not deny anything. It builds on a plus, 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 plus. And for the first time mentions really this aspect of this personal entity, this personal created God which is there, and also identifies it with Rudra and giving the qualities of Shiva, thereby making the Supreme Shiva for future generations to conceive of. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace beyond all thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Swamiji.
Swamiji.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you,
Thank you,
Swamiji.
Swamiji.